All right, we should now be at 1 o'clock, which means it's time for the Football Outsiders Radio Hour. Not on the radio and not always an hour, but you'll find it Thursdays on twitch.com/FB Outsiders at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, and then you'll find it on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network on all your favorite podcast apps. Hello, I'm Aaron Schatz, the editor-in-chief of Football Outsiders. Welcome to the Football Outsiders Radio Hour. I have my guests today, Mike Tanier and Derrik Klassen, and we're here to talk about the NFL. Hi, guys. How are you today?
Doing great. Happy Tebow Easter to everyone and to those who celebrate. He has risen. Right. But he is not here because we don't do a lot of Tebow on Football Outsiders.
No, but we want to get those Twitch viewers, so we probably should put Tebow in our keywords.
Every day for the rest of our lives. I should walk around with Tebow keywords over my head.
I like
at least
the theory.
At least until he inevitably gets cut again.
Well, inevitably, but the theory is that they gave him number 85 to sell jerseys, and then he's going to switch at some point to 15 if Minshew gets traded so that they can sell more jerseys.
That's great. Just have him wear a different number every time he takes the field. Why not?
But, yeah, not too much Tebow talk because the fact is he's going to catch 3 passes and throw 2 this season.
Oh, but that one goal line touchdown
is going to be monstrous, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be it'll be the third highlight to put in this highlight package. It'll be phenomenal.
It'll be beautiful. The original goal of today's show was going to be to jump off an article that I was writing for ESPN Plus that I thought was coming out today, but has not come out yet. And it was a projected top 10 picks of the 2022 NFL Draft. And it will not surprise you to learn that the Jacksonville Jaguars were in that top 10, along with most of the usual suspects. The Jets were number 1, the Texans are number 2, the Giants, the Bengals. So Todd McShay did his way too early 2022 mock draft a week or two ago, and his mock draft was based on power rankings by some of the ESPN writers. Mm-hmm. So my top 10 picks and their top 10 picks were the same, except for one team that might surprise people that I had in my projected top 10 picks in the next draft. Yes.
Titans?
Not the Titans, although we do have them dropping from last year. But the big reason why Derrik is on the show this week is because it's the Los Angeles Chargers, which is a lot of people's hot team for 2021, but which I had in our projected top 10 picks for the 2022 draft. So that gives us an opening to talk about the AFC West and the Chargers in general. And Derrik, I know you've been watching a lot of Chargers over the last week or two, getting ready to write their chapter for Football Outsiders Almanac, our book that comes out in mid-July. I don't know. What are you feeling about this team?
I mean, I'm not particularly excited about them. I know they've become like the media darling again because it seems like it's like, Charlie Brown trying to kick the football. This is the football community's favorite team to consistently fall for, them and the Browns, right? At least recently. So, I think parts of the roster are exciting. I think Justin Herbert is a legit quarterback. I think we're kind of expecting him to be too good, too fast next year in terms of why this team might be great. Basically everything that we're doing, everything that we're putting onto the Chargers is they can be great if Herbert is suddenly a top 7 quarterback. Well, he's probably good and legit, but expecting him to be top 7 next year is probably putting a little bit too much on his plate, even with the good improvements I think they made on the offensive line. So I think the offense is worth being excited about to some degree. My problem, and I think our projections show this, is the defense. I think it's an extremely stars and scrubs roster, and I don't think it's particularly well built for what Staley wants to do, or at least what Staley showed he did in Los Angeles with the Rams. Maybe he adapts very well. I think he showed that he could with the Rams roster, but I just think there's a lot of holes on that defense that kind of give me pause about them being a team that's going to be good for this year.
I see what you're saying about stars and scrubs there. There are just some
And one of their two stars is coming off a bad knee.
Right.
Like it's just I have a lot of pause with that.
And Derwin's among the stars, right? And he's played one good year out of one healthy year out of three. Right. Kenneth Murray, star, scrub, or like scrub trying to be star trying to be scrub?
Scrub trying to be star. I was not particularly high on him coming out of college. I thought he was fine as a rookie, but I think he's not yet somebody who's a difference maker. And I think projecting him into that closer to star range probably takes a lot of improvement. And I'm not entirely confident he's going to get there, especially because I don't think the defensive line in front of him is particularly good and helpful. So I just have a hard time seeing him be one of the top linebackers right away.
I think a lot of the expectations about the Chargers are just, well, look at what Brandon Staley did with the Rams defense. Now he'll do it with the Chargers defense, except for, first of all, the fact is, historically, there aren't a lot of defensive coaches that we can say, like, we know that they improve defenses, because there just aren't a lot of defensive coaches that good who've coached for multiple teams. And the problem with Staley is the problem you have with a lot of these guys who are supposed to like dramatically improve a team, which is we have a sample size of one. Like we have one instance of Staley dramatically improving a defense. We don't know what he's going to do in his other stops. And this stop doesn't have Aaron Donald and it doesn't have Jalen Ramsey. It's a huge step down at both of those positions. I mean, to Jerry Tillery or whatever at defensive end, assuming they go to a 3-4, and the cornerbacks are, I mean, kind of underrated. What's it, Mike Davis? But they're not Jalen Ramsey.
Right. I think the cornerback room is weird because I don't think Chris Harris is as good as he used to be. Right. I think losing Casey Hayward is going to not be very good for them. Michael Davis is like a fine number 2, but you probably want somebody who's going to be better than that. And then the only guy they really brought in to fix anything is Asante Samuel, who's like a small rookie. He's like 5'8", 5'9", like 180 pounds. I think he could be good eventually, but expecting him to be an impact player year one is probably generous, I think.
I get that Dallas Cowboys secondary last year where it's like, oh, we'll plug in Diggs, as second rounder, a good prospect, and he'll be fine. And he's just utterly lost for like the first 6 or 7 games. By the time he starts figuring things out, he's one of the reasons you're 2-5, you're 1-6, and you're already down the tubes.
Yeah, Derrik, you did the work last year on first-round picks and how they tend to have good years at cornerback, but second-rounders and third-rounders not as much.
Yeah, that was pretty much what the data showed. Is like first-rounders, one, they're going to play. Like unless they get hurt, the first-rounders, they're going to be your starter. Some of that might just be teams don't want to have their first-rounder on the bench, and they're going to play him no matter what. But I think generally first-round picks at cornerback played at a pretty decent NFL starter level. Second rounders and beyond, day 2 guys, it's really closer to a coin flip. And I think especially with a guy like Samuel, who, like I said, is small, I think it's probably more likely that he falls on like the side of the coin where he's not going to be an impact player year one, because one, making the transition to cornerback in the NFL is hard enough. And when you're significantly smaller than almost every wide receiver you're going to face, that just makes it even tougher, I think.
And then, I mean, the problem with cornerback depth is that you have to have a lot of it in the AFC West, because you have to go up against Kansas City and Denver, Denver, for all the problems that they currently have at quarterback, right? They've got really good receivers. So you want to have cornerback depth in that division, and the Chargers just don't.
Remember that like 3-week period where they were going to revolutionize being all dime all the time and have 7 defensive backs, and that was going to be the future, and the Chargers had it figured out. And then the Patriots ran up the middle of them in a playoff game. They just went power against them. Like, nope, that's the end of that. And it's shocking because it looked like they had the depth for that. But of course, Derwin James looked like he was going to be a superstar. Now he's kind of an injury case, as so often happens to the Chargers. Nasir Adderley is a guy I kind of like coming out of Delaware. Maybe I got the star around the last name, got me a little overexcited. I think he's been an injury case. He's kind of a tweener at this point. And I look down that depth. It's like, that's not impressive depth.
Other guys the Raiders have left the team. Adrian Phillips was part of that safety depth. He's gone now.
Yeah. And the Raiders have a good receiving core too. Don't lose track of it. I mean, they got bodies at receiver.
Yes, Ruggs.
Decent bodies.
Obviously, Edwards supposed to be better. Renfro.
And the tight end that you have to cover with DB.
And I think specifically with Staley, it's like it's not just that you need depth at cornerback, but you need a third safety who can play. Like that's a lot of what they did in their defense. Is they would that the extra defensive back that they would bring in when they went 6 DBs was a safety,
Right.
and the Chargers don't have that guy. Like I mean, I'm not even positive they have a second one because I'm not entirely positive that Nasir Adderley is that great.
Right.
But their safeties after that are Mark Webb, who's a 7th-round pick. Who I did not think was very good in college. And then Aloki Gilman, who was a 6th-round pick last year. So like they don't have that third safety that Staley is going to want in this system, I don't think.
Every year now we get like 5. Oh, he's the honey badger.
Mm-hmm.
Who was it? Divine Diablo, who I think is a linebacker. But it's like, no, look, they had him lined up in the slot. He's another. And you would have thought the Chargers would have gone after like every one of these honey badger-esque clones. You can grab the really good one in the 2nd round, and then the jokey one in the 4th round, and the Division II one in the 7th round. But they don't do it. So that's not the direction they're heading in. And part of that is, of course, it's a different defensive coaching staff. And despite the success that the new coach had with the Rams, I don't have a sense on either side of the ball of these assistants at all and what they're bringing to the table.
They're not names that I know, certainly.
No.
But
Well,
I mean,
probably,
Staley wasn't a name that we knew. I mean, Joe Lombardi is a name that we know, an offensive coordinator.
Right.
But I mean, he used to work for the Saints at one point, right?
Yeah, he was their quarterback coach. And that's the thing is that he had also previously worked with the Lions in like 2014, 2015 as their OC, I think. But he was most recently with the Saints as their quarterback coach. And like I think for a lot of reasons, the offense isn't really going to look anything like the Saints is. One, I don't think Herbert is that kind of, quick game passer that Brees was. I mean, granted, not very many are, but I just
he's
don't
more
think
of a deep passer.
Right. He's more of a, play action. You probably want to use Herbert the same way you're going to use like Ryan Tannehill, which is like an intermediate deep passer, play action, all that sort of stuff. And to me, it also just seems that the way they've built this pass catching core, I don't think they want to be under center very often. One, I don't think their running backs are really built to run a lot of under center stuff. I think they want to be a gun team in terms of the running back personnel. And then Jared Cook is your top tight end. He's not a blocker. He's never has been. And especially now in his old age, I don't think he is. So I think they're a team who's going to want to be a little bit more, like spread gun with intermediate concepts and stuff like that. And I don't think it's going to look the same way it did with the Saints and Breeze.
Blake Gardner 11 in the chat says he agrees the secondary for the Chargers has dwindled over the last few years. M. Noskow asks, what do you guys like what they did? Do you guys like what they did with their offensive line this offseason?
I liked it a lot. I mean, paying Lindsley was, I think, pretty good. I think it was a significant upgrade over what they had last year. I wrote it I'm writing it in my chapter, but I think Lindsley only allowed one blown block in pass protection all of last year. Whereas I think it was Dan Feeney was like literally one of the worst centers in the league in terms of blown blocks. So quite a big difference in that regard. And then I think taking Slater was obviously really good. And then trying to sign guys like Ode Abushi and Matt Filer to fill in the guard slot. Probably not going to be impact players, but I think it could still be upgrades over what they had.
Right. I agree. They were getting old up front. And I think that was, and now, well, I mean, some of these guys are a little bit older players still. I mean, I still see Balago on the depth chart there, but they're not as old. It's not a desperate situation anymore.
They tried to take young guys a couple years ago, but those guys just never panned out when they had Feeney and Lamb, and those guys just didn't develop the way they were supposed to.
Right.
Well, I mean, how do you write that? I gotta ask you before. I didn't mean to interrupt you. How do you write this chapter, Derek, knowing that half these guys are going to get injured in some freak accident anyway?
I mean, I guess that's kind of I don't know. I mean, yeah, I assume. Let's see. Their starting five right now is Slater, Abushi, Lindsley, Filer, Bulaga. Probably at most two of them are going to be, safe by the end of the year because that's just how the Chargers roll. They never get through the season with a healthy offensive line. The only guy that they had consistently healthy lately was Sam Tevy. And I'm going to be honest, that's not a guy you want to be consistently starting.
No, and the first round pick is Slater. I mean, there is a plugged-in toaster falling towards his wash tub as we speak right now. It's just ridiculous how this happens. But I'm sorry. I know I interrupted you in the middle of a thought there. I apologize.
No, you're good.
The other thing I'm going to point out about the Chargers is I just was emailing with Derrik about this, but I think a lot of the expectations are Herbert takes a big step forward in his second year. And I've done research showing that the most likely year for a quarterback to take a step forward is year 2. But I went back and I looked at that, and it looks like the main reason why quarterbacks tend to take a step forward in year 2 is that they suck so much in year 1. If you look just at the above average ones from like the last 20 years, almost all of them were a little worse in their second year than they were in their first year. Luck was not quite as good in his second year. Wilson was not quite as good in his second year. Griffin, and on and on. It's like with Matt Ryan, when you're that good as a rookie, and Herbert was, you don't actually tend to take a step forward in your second season.
So it's like so many guys go from a D- to a C, that the guys who are at A go down to a B, but they're overwhelmed in the data, so to speak, by all the guys going from stinking to adequate, like just sort of washes them out.
I think that the most likely is that Herbert is about what he was last year, which is good, but combined with what we think the defense is going to be, is just not a playoff team.
Right. I think that's the thing, is like Herbert doesn't really need to actually be better to warrant him being a good quarterback. Yeah, I think the offense finished like 7th in passing DVOA. I think Herbert alone was like 8th in DYAR. I mean, he was like a pretty good and productive quarterback, even as a rookie. And so if he's not even really, meaningfully better than that, he's still going to give them really good play. It's just like you said, I think unless he's literally a top 3 quarterback in the league in terms of production, it's really hard to see how he is good enough to lift the rest of this roster out from where it's going to need to go, especially because last year I think their rushing offense was second to last in the league. And I know the offensive line is better, but I really don't trust their running backs. And I still don't think the offensive line is that kind of good to make them a legitimately good rushing offense. So it's just so much on Herbert's shoulders that, like I said, unless he becomes literally Patrick Mahomes level of jump, which is just, there's no way. I just don't see how this is a good playoff roster.
Aaron tweeted that like statistically he settled in and kind of took a step back at the end of the year. Did you watch any late year film and see evidence of that, or see reasons why that was happening?
Not really, honestly. I think a lot of that is just, I would assume part of what that is that if you look at his full year of data, he was crazy productive on 3rd and 4th downs, and he was crazy productive under pressure. So my assumption is just that some of that stuff kind of started to take a little bit of a step back towards the end of the year. Like he already started to have kind of a mini regression. But the good news is, and I'm writing this in the chapter, like he was still pretty good in a lot of the stable metrics. Like I think he was just above league average in terms of throwing against non-pressure, and then in the pocket, throws just in the pocket, he was well above average. So I'm not really worried about a total regression, but I think part of why he started to fall off towards the end of the year is that some of that crazy playmaking stuff he was doing wasn't quite working out, which is not to say that he's going to be bad. It's just that it's hard to sustain that at that level for very long, especially when the Chargers aren't like they're not the Chiefs level of caliber in terms of how they're built.
This comes up a lot with young quarterbacks, but when they do better at the end of the year, we all expect them to roll it over into the following year, and it doesn't happen. But the same can be said about Herbert. Like young quarterbacks who play a little worse in the second half of the year, that doesn't roll over till to the next year either. So I'm not expecting like a big decline from him or anything like that. I'm just not expecting a big step forward.
Exactly. No, I think that's perfectly fair.
Thanks to the anonymous gifter who gifted a tier 1 sub to the FB Outsiders community. I cannot thank you by name because you are an anonymous gifter. So I just have to thank you anonymously. Okay, let's take a look at the rest of this division. Kansas City Chiefs, great team or the greatest team?
Derek, that's on you, man.
I mean, I still think the roster is significantly more incomplete than the Bucs roster is. I think the Bucs just have fewer holes. But the thing with the Chiefs is that their formula this whole time has been, we're going to be the best offense in the league, and we're going to try to just get by on defense. And I mean, if you just look at the roster, that's pretty much what they're doing. I think, this offseason, they put more of an emphasis on making sure that Patrick Mahomes is protected and comfy in the pocket than giving him just a boatload of weapons. I still think their pass catching core is fine because at the end of the day, when you have Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, you only need so much more. But I think they're still probably not the greatest team because I think the Bucs offense is just, I think the Bucs as a whole team are just significantly more complete. And I wrote about this in the chapter, and we're probably going to get to talking about it more, but I don't think that defense is very good. And I think in terms of injury luck, they were the luckiest defense in terms of injury last year. And I think assuming they even get back to average in terms of injury luck next year, things could get very bad very fast.
I've seen people on Twitter, I don't remember who, but said this could be the best team ever. And I'm just thinking,
no, that defense is not
on
there,
one
man.
side of the ball. It certainly can't be.
Well, and it's very much like The Greatest Show on Turf. Very similar vibe where the defense for the Rams, 1999, 2000, 2001, it was a fast break stop defense. Like, you're going to score points against them. You're going to get drives against them. They're going to get turnovers and sacks against you. And that's how the Rams operated when they had Warner and all them. And that's how the Chiefs operated on their Super Bowl runs. I would love to see another edge rusher. Or I would love to see a better cornerback. You know, that's kind of the two things I look at this. If your goal is, yeah, you're going to run against us, you're going to get a screen game against us, you're going to get short yardage against us, all those things that the Chiefs were willing to give up on defense. I need more than Taco Charlton on the other side of the ball from Frank Clark.
They might have that other cornerback depending on what they get from DeAndre Baker, who was the first-round pick of the Giants, who was involved in that very, very strange story about a card game robbery and then got off from that, and then he ended up getting cut by the Giants, and the Chiefs picked him up. And if he has first-round talent, that's I mean, he's not even a starter for them, but that's a huge cornerback depth addition.
Yeah. Good.
Did the Chiefs offensive line simply go from strong tackles, weak interior to a strong interior with weak tackles? Well, not with Orlando Brown there.
Right. I mean, I think Brown is he's not the best tackle in the league or anything, but I think you're pretty set at that tackle position with him. Obviously, Mike Remmers is bad. I don't think that they want him starting there probably longer than this year.
Or their hope is that Lucas Nang grabs the job.
I'm not. So I didn't love him coming out of college, so I'm not entirely sold that that's going to really solve the problem either. But I think, again, you can't really say it's like a bad tackles period when you have Brown on one side. They might be iffy at the right tackle position, but I think other than that, it's a damn good offensive line.
And they certainly have depth. I mean, the big problem, the thing about Tampa Bay, and we wrote this as last year's chapter, and then they were the healthiest team in the league, is that Tampa Bay has very little depth. And I think Kansas City they're not as, all their holes are not filled with good players in the way Tampa Bay's are, but they have more depth, and in particular, their offensive line, where they just got killed at the end of last year, they've added so much depth there for now that they could withstand a couple of injuries.
Absolutely. And I'm looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I guess it's not terrible depth, but now after a healthy season, it's like unproven depth. You go to this guy, and is he any good? We didn't see him last year. He doesn't look good on paper. Does he magically get good because of Tom Brady's presence or being surrounded by other players? We don't know. Whereas, everybody on the Chiefs bench will look at him and say, oh, yeah, he had to be a spot starter that 1 year, or he was a former first-round pick or second-round pick, whatever. You can see the story where he comes in, plays 5 or 6 games, and is as good, unless it's Tyreek or Kelsey or somebody, as good as the starter in that position.
So the Denver Broncos, is there any reason to disagree with conventional wisdom here, which is this is going to be a very good defense, and there are a lot of pieces on offense that if they traded for Aaron Rodgers, this would be a big contender, and otherwise they're going 7-10, which is a record now that you can go in the NFL.
Yes. perfect for the Broncos, just in time for the 2021 Broncos.
Right.
7-10 season.
I mean, I actually think that's the conventional wisdom is like pretty spot on here. I think it's a really good roster, and it's just missing the most important piece, obviously. And I think there's maybe a world where Teddy Bridgewater gives them better play than Drew Lock, but it's not going to be meaningful enough to get this roster into,
I think we live in that world.
The top 7. Yeah, we probably live in that world, but I don't think it's going to be enough to get them into the top 7 range of NFL teams. Where they're like a legitimate contender. I think Teddy Bridgewater probably brings them maybe eking into the playoffs at best, in a very, very edge wild card spot. But I don't think it would be a great roster without Aaron Rodgers. I think he would. I mean, I guess this is true of any team that Aaron Rodgers could go to, but he would be really the piece that kind of completes them and puts them into like a legitimately great roster.
And I'll point out, we were talking about cornerback depth in the AFC West. This is the team that went out and built cornerback depth because they now have Bryce Callahan, who's a very good nickelback, may not even be their main nickelback. And Ojemudia, who was a starter last year, is now their 5th corner.
Right, and they got Darby now. And one thing, my problem with the Broncos, and I look at it, and it looks very good on paper, and they're all a lot of first, second-round picks. I've never seen them all together at the same time. So you talk about this great roster. I've never seen how it's supposed to look. It's not like, well, they were good together for 6 teams. Sutton and Judy have never played together or played together very sparingly. I forget which one. So I don't know how great this receiving core is because I saw one guy good for one period, one guy good for another period. I saw Hamler in these desperate situations look like a good slot guy. Kind of the same thing on the offensive line. This talent, this talent, this talent. It's never been a really good offensive line all at the same time. You can even do the same thing on the defense now, where so many guys were hurt, unavailable, et cetera. It's like I can look at these names and say if everyone's rowing in the same direction, it's a good defense. I have a hard time making that big jump. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers aside, I have a hard time looking at this and saying, oh, it's going to be fine, it's going to be good because all of them at one point in their career over the last 6 years look like they had potential to be great. They just have never done it at the same time on the same team.
There's also the question of if they do make an Aaron Rodgers trade, what players would they have to trade away in that trade? There's not a lot of depth at outside linebacker if Bradley Chubb had to be in that trade.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more depth at wide receiver, but if Jerry Jeudy had to be in that trade, that would be a big step down. I mean, obviously, look, you do the trade to get the step up at quarterback that Aaron Rodgers would represent, but the people look at this roster and think, wow, if you added Aaron Rodgers to this, but are you adding, if that does happen, we all have to talk in the subjective mood here, but if that were to happen, are they adding him to the same roster?
You trade Bowles away and then forget Rodgers, so he has no left tackle, Trade Risner away so you don't have the guy who's, supposed to replace Bowles if something goes wrong. Yeah, there's no good answer on that.
Yeah, I think what's really frustrating too for them, I think, with this particular situation is that obviously, like we were talking about with the depth that they have at corner, they're probably best equipped to trade away a corner. The problem is the Packers just took one, so they probably are not very inclined to want to bring in another one. They might, because I'm not sure how much they trust their cornerback depth to begin with. But like, if they just took a guy in the first round, I'm not entirely sure that's gonna be the piece that really sends them over the top in a trade like this.
And then the other
3-team deal.
The other thing 3-team deal. Now we're getting into NBA territory.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
The other thing,
let's get the Jaguars involved in this to broker this.
I'm going to point out, and we have to point this out, being football outsiders and being analytics people and being associated with Edge Sports and talking about fourth downs, is that Vic Fangio was the worst coach in the league last year on fourth downs. He finished last in aggressiveness index. The whole league, except for two guys, was above the historical average. I really want him to be more aggressive. He's got to be more aggressive. The Broncos have got to be more aggressive.
Not that I think Vic Fangio is ever going to suddenly get into the top 5 of that range or whatever, because I think defensive coaches just are probably generally less inclined to be that way, or at least historically have been. But I do think part of that is probably they just straight up didn't trust Drew Lock in any capacity over this past year. So I assume if they can get any degree of quarterback play, they would probably get at least a little bit closer to average in terms of aggressiveness and stuff like that. But again, I think when you have probably a bottom 3 starter in the league last year, and you're already probably an older defensive coach who is not as inclined to be aggressive, it's probably not entirely surprising that they ended up that low in that ranking.
Yeah.
No, not surprising, but it's still a bummer.
Yeah. We don't trust him on 4th and inches. So we're going to win this game somehow by giving the defense the ball, and then he'll lead a comeback from 1st and 10. But that's the defeatist mentality that you're talking about when you're a veteran coach. Oh, the defense will score. The defense will pitch a shutout. It'll be fine.
Edgeman05 suggests the Detroit Lions for a 3-team deal, I think. But
yes.
I mean,
they get a receiver.
Fun, but what are they would rather end up with Rodgers himself.
Let's see, who's a real ankle biter here that we can tempt them with? Bowles is a Campbell kind of guy. I know they just picked Panay,
they just picked the tackles, so they've got Decker and Sewell as their tackles.
Nobody's that much of a cement head. Josie Jewell.
I was about to say, yep. That's probably your best bet.
That is Campbell bait. He's Campbell bait.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the last team in the AFC West before we move on to other things, which is, what do you think of the Las Vegas Raiders? Surprisingly strong playoff contender projection from us. And Derek Carr constantly has better stats than his reputation.
Yeah.
I think Carr is good. I think it's just, he has the Alex Smith thing where it's just frustrating that sometimes he's very clearly doesn't have any interest in throwing whatever the 15-yard route is and will very quickly rush himself to whatever the 3-yard route is. But I think generally he's someone who doesn't make mistakes and is going to make your offense at least as good as it's supposed to be on paper, if not slightly better. I think he's just I think he's very good in that sense. And I think he's actually gotten better over the years at managing the pocket. I think early on he was actually really bad at that, and was kind of a product of having one of the best offensive lines in the league. Now I think he's gotten a little bit more self-dependent in that sense, even though I think the Raiders offensive line has still been mostly fine as of late. I think the problem again with the Raiders is going to be defense. I think I don't think they fixed enough of what they needed to fix. I really don't trust their pass rushing crew at all, even though they drafted Malcolm Kuntz in the 3rd round. I don't think that's going to be enough. I don't think their linebackers are very good outside of Corey Littleton. And I mean, their entire secondary is just a lot of guys who I think have generally not been as good as they were supposed to be with their pre-draft billing. Hopefully Trevor Moore fixes that. I think he was a good pick, but like if they're still starting a guy like Jonathan Abram or giving Carl Joseph significant snaps, like they're probably not going to be in the spot that they want to be.
Right. Abram never really was able to stay healthy, and he's kind of a runaround guy. I thought he'd be
plays
better.
Like a maniac.
Yeah, I mean he's a coach's dream. Mm-hmm. I remember interviewing him like, this is a coach's dream. Like I want to go out there and do nothing but run sprints and hit things, But yeah, he misses tackles, he whiffs on them, he gets hurt, etc. The cornerbacks again, that's like all the Mike Mayock specials where it's like
Arnett going too early.
Yeah, right. It's too early, too much of a, well, he succeeded at Clemson, therefore he's, this and that. My boy Divine Diablo's here. We just brought that up. And Mooring's mostly a free safety, really. I mean, that's kind of his game.
Right.
So
right.
That's the back end of your defense.
Mm-hmm.
He's the free. I mean, there's Abram and Joseph playing strong. They have Casey Hayward now. They brought in veterans. Yeah, they brought in Ngakoue.
Ngakoue's not a bad fit on that defensive line. I think that's a good. It's so much mush. It's kind of like Derek Carr. When you said Derek Carr is good, you have to say it with the high pitch. Yeah, he's good.
Yeah.
You got to do that Seinfeld thing. Because that's kind of where it is. And you can do that with so many of the, like I said, the receiver core was good. I should have done the high pitch thing there. It's a bunch of number 2s and number 3s with a potential number 1 on there. And then you go down this whole roster. And what do you get out of that? You get the team we've seen every year who's 6-4 until the hard part of the schedule comes, or they get a couple of injuries and then they fall off. And they could do the same thing this year, or like you said, they could wind up 9-8 because like a couple of things break right, and that's after 4 years of building,
And I think with Ngakoue, I mean, I think he's a good pass rusher, or can be, but he is so miserable in run defense that I think that's going to be a problem, especially when like they don't have a very good run defense unit outside of him. It's not like he's like the lone blemish that they could maybe scheme some stuff around and kind of hide him. Like they have a lot of other problems on run defense. They were one of the worst in the league last year, and I don't think they did enough to fix that this year. And then Ngakoue, like I said, is not going to do anything to fix that. If anything, he's going to make it worse.
They got Diablo and Tanner Muse on their linebacking. On their linebacking, this is where the Chargers dime dude guys. Right. They all went to the Raiders. Who aren't going to use them as like dime dudes, slot dude, honey badgers. They're going to use them as inside linebackers and get killed.
Well, at least they're in a division where the other teams don't want to run that much.
You got that going for you, yes.
Right? The Chiefs are pretty pass-focused. The Chargers, like you said, right? They're pretty pass-focused. Their backs are more pass-catching backs than they are like power guys.
I will say where that's somewhat interesting is that with the Chiefs are, I think, I'm writing about this in the chapter because I know I talked to you about this a little bit, Aaron. I think they're going to be a lot more of like a power counter gap type of pulling team where just the personnel that they brought in with like Thuney, Orlando Brown, Creed Humphrey, if he ends up starting, like these are guys that they want to have down blocking and pulling. And I think the offense, maybe the run pass splits are not going to look any different in terms of, how much they're running the ball. But I think the way that they are running the ball is going to be a lot different. And if you're running power directly at a guy like Yannick Ngakoue, you're going to get the results that you're going to want to get.
I don't know. I saw Andy Reid with like John Runyon at right tackle. You're dropping the pass protect 60 times. So, we'll see. We'll see.
Right. The pass rush splits aren't going to change. Andy Reid is not going to change. He passes a lot. It's more the type of running play, I think, and like what they run when they're winning by 17 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody who's watching. Once again, it's the Football Outsiders Radio Hour on Twitch every Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern. I want to thank all our viewers and all our listeners on the podcast network after the fact. Let's change the subject and talk now about rookie quarterbacks and when we think they're finally going to play. I know our old friend Bill Barnwell did a big ESPN article where he talked about when guys are finally going to play. Let's talk a little bit about when these guys are finally going to play and what we can expect out of them as rookies. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson are going to play from week one.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, Lawrence is completely uncontested, obviously. Zach Wilson, you could probably make the argument that, certainly I would make this argument that as a prospect coming out, he is not somebody who is ready to play week one. But the rest of the Jets quarterback roster is going to make it so that he has to play week one.
Right,
I think their other quarterbacks are it's like Mike White and James Morgan or something like that. Like it's completely zero chance of NFL starter outside of Wilson. So I think he's going to get the reins year one. And those are probably the only two that I would lock in week one.
So you would think that they're going to, in Chicago, you would expect them to go with Andy Dalton instead of Fields. Because there's been a lot of people saying, oh, they should go with Fields. Maybe Fields will win the job. I mean, I'm with you. I think they're going to start the year with Andy Dalton, not with Fields.
I think that one is going to be closer to a situation where they really try to sell us on this idea that they're going to sit Fields and that this is some miracle, we're going to give him all the development we want. And then by week 4, they realize they actually have a pretty good roster, except their quarterback sucks. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to start to play Fields. I think it's going to be a case where, I certainly don't think we make it to November without seeing Fields. And I think we're probably going to see him significantly sooner than that.
I'm trying to gauge from the schedule. They open at the Rams. That's not a terrible opener to say I'm going to put a rookie out there, but I can see you also saying, oh, no, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. Yeah. Then you get the Bengals week 2, and it's I've seen things where I've seen the Bill O'Brien switch, where the switch comes in the halftime of the opener, and I can see something that quick happening with Fields there, because I think I mentioned this last week. Part of it is what's optimal, what makes sense, and part of it is almost like the game within the game and the politics of saying, oh, we want to try and get 2 years of job security out of the rookie we just drafted. And some of that might be, let's stick him on the bench for 4 games. Then you unveil him, he gets hot, and that's what saves our job.
Yeah, they actually have their tough defenses middle of the year. C. Clinton points out week 4 against Detroit or week 5 against Las Vegas would be good entry points for Fields. Because once you don't want him getting, let's assume Aaron Rodgers stays in Green Bay. You don't want him getting slaughtered by the Packers in week 6 as his first start. And then you go Tampa Bay, San Francisco, Pittsburgh. Those are tough defenses.
Right.
And then Baltimore after the bye week.
Exactly. I think that middle stretch of it, it goes, like you said, Packers, Bucks, 49ers, Steelers, Ravens. I think you have to get him in at least one game before that, or completely wait for after it. Because if you throw him in, at the start of that or in the middle of that, like you said, you're tossing him up to defenses that are all presumably going to be in the top 10 again. And a lot of them are incredibly aggressive. The Steelers and the Ravens are some of the most blitz-happy teams in the league.
Bucks too.
And the Bucks, yeah. And part of the problem with Fields coming out, and I love Fields coming out, I think he's a great prospect, but part of the thing was he will hold the ball in the pocket a lot, even if you blitz him. And if all these teams are going to blitz him, it's probably going to lead to some pretty noticeable rookie struggles in that regard. So, I think like you guys are saying, he probably has to come in that earlier stretch. I would say at least after the Rams, because after the Rams, that week 1 game, you get some decent ones for him to come in. Before that, just disgusting middle of the season stretch. So I would probably bet that he's going to end up in that, week 3 to week 5 range with some of those cupcake teams. Or not cupcake, but easier than what they're going to get after that.
And then, so next is Trey Lance.
Man, actually, I said Lawrence and Wilson are the only ones I expect to start week 1, but I think the more I think about it, Lance is probably going to end up starting week 1. Because I think Kyle is just done with the Jimmy G experiment. I think, it was a fine thing to try to take on, to try to get your quarterback for a 2nd-round pick all these years ago, but between all the injuries, with the way I think Jimmy kind of failed him in the Super Bowl, with the way he played last year, I think I think Kyle is a bit done with this. And I think if Lance is even sort of close to ready, which I think he will be because he's the guy who has the most under center experience with this, coming out of college. And I think, his quarterback coach, Quincy Avery, talked a lot about like he was the guy who had a lot of like protections and stuff on his plate at North Dakota State, which is obviously going to be pretty huge in the Kyle Shanahan offense. So I think Lance is fairly equipped to start week 1. And I think, like I said, if he's even close to ready, I think he's going to.
I just started a poll for our viewers, by the way. This is me playing around with the Twitch software. Which quarterback plays first? Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, or Davis Mills? So vote. You can vote in that poll. So you think Trey Lance week 1. What do you think, Mike?
I'm looking at Lions on the road week 1, Eagles on the road week 2. You can get your rookie quarterback out there, debut him on the road against 2 weaker teams. Going into Philly is not going to be anything. It's going to be demoralized. I don't know if that's the Eagles opener or not, but it's going to be the most demoralized fan base in the world. I live here. I know. So that's not a terrible thing. And I don't look past the idea that Garoppolo is the first quarterback to get traded if some team suffers an injury, et cetera. Right. They go looking around. It's like, who's our stopgap starter, who we could float, our Sam Bradford, who could float as a starter for a year or two. And get him, offer a second round pick, whatever. It could be Garoppolo again, like you said, if Shanahan likes what he's seeing in Lance.
And then that leaves Mac Jones. Well, it doesn't leave because we're going to get to the third round. But Mac Jones in New England. When does Mac Jones get his first start?
I don't think Mac Jones plays this year. I don't think he.
You think I don't think with Newton all year?
I think unless it is just disaster territory with Newton. Which I guess is possible because I don't think they fixed the offense all that much. And Newton is obviously was not that great last year, still battling a lot of injuries, the handful of years. So I think it's entirely possible that Newton is just so bad enough that they are just like, we have to put somebody else in. But I don't think Jones is going to get there on his own merit for a couple of reasons. One, I just don't think that he was that great of a quarterback prospect. I don't think he is at all equipped to do any of the, outside of the pocket, under pressure stuff right away. He's not a very good athlete, doesn't have a very good arm. So I don't think he's right.
Otherwise, he's phenomenal.
Well, in structure, right? Like,
right.
Identifying defenses and knowing where to send the ball.
Right. Well, and my question with what he's going to have to do in structure is that he's been constantly billed as this great fit for what the Patriots did, like relative to what they did with Brady. But like Mac Jones didn't throw quick game at Alabama. They replaced all of it with RPOs or just running the ball. So like he didn't do very much of the traditional, drop back quick game stuff, which is obviously what the Patriots were known for a lot of the time with Brady. So I think it's going to be a lot bigger of a transition than people are assuming it is for Mac Jones, which is why I don't think he's going to end up playing. So, maybe the offense just looks so different with Cam Newton that doesn't really matter. But I think it's kind of a big transition for him. And I don't think he has the tools to make up for not being a guy who's going to be ready very early.
You guys are all sleeping on Brian Hoyer.
I can't believe they brought Hoyer back. Like, that has got to be a real diss on Jarrett Stidham there if they're actually thinking of Hoyer as the third quarterback this year instead of Stidham.
Well, I mean, Stidham's a mess. But, Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels are geniuses and also need to bring a mentor in to help them with in the room.
Because they're not mentoring enough on their own.
Yes, there's not enough leadership there. We have to bring Brian Hoyer in as well. So when Josh McDaniels tries to bite someone's head off, Brian Hoyer is there to say, it's okay. It's okay, Mac. It's okay.
I will say, I don't think there's a clear, this is the spot we start playing Mac Jones in the schedule for the Patriots. No. If the defense rebounds, which I think they will, and they're contending for the playoffs, you don't suddenly go to the rookie for the last 4 games. Their bye week is very late.
14, week 14.
There's no clear, the only clear this is where we play the rookie spot might be week 5 against Houston or 6 at home against Dallas. Maybe you'd rather do 6 because you don't want it to be we're benching Cam Newton after Tom Brady slaughters us. Right. See, Clint, right. I can't believe people thought Stidham would beat Cam Newton for the starting job last year. I can't believe that either. So.
It's wish casting. Belichick is a genius. This is the guy he drafted, and they telegraphed it out. They emanated that story out of there a lot. So it's this is the guy. This is the guy. but it was based on nothing. It was based on the appeal to authority. Belichick could not possibly have given this guy this opportunity unless he was brilliant. And lo and behold, he's not. He's about as not a prospect as a mid-round draft pick can be.
Yeah, it was just pure fan fiction. Like, he's one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever charted, and I didn't think he was worth a draft pick, period. And I think he went in the 4th round, and then showed really nothing in his early time in the NFL. So I think the idea that he could have beat even a hobbled Cam Newton was just absurd to me.
Every year, there's the guy that gets drafted because of like the contrarian logic of the scout. Well, look how bad the supporting cast was and the situation was. It was Clayton Thorsten. The Eagles drafted, and
he was awful.
you never had the joy of watching him in training camp, just like the fluttering balls all over the place, like a high school kid was out there. But you'd watch film of him, and it's like, well, he didn't have any protection and he didn't have any weapons. Yeah, and he didn't do anything either. He probably completed some screens and found his check down guy super fast a lot of times, and like you build him up until he's this mid-round pick because he's a good decision maker. And I think Stidham was that guy. Thorsten was that guy. I'm wondering if there was that guy this year in the rookie class, because I feel like there might have been a couple of candidates, but I'm not sure if there was one.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Book was so much like, oh, well, he didn't have a good cast, so we can prop him up. But Ian Book was one of the most confusing quarterback picks I've ever seen. Like, I even thought Kyle Trask in the 2nd round was bad, but I at least like understood the thought process of how they got there.
Yes.
How the Saints got to Book is just beyond me. Like, I don't know.
They wanted to see what would happen if Jameis and Tyreek Hill had a child. And they acquired like sort of the weirdest elements of each person.
I will say, as far as mid-round picks, so, I mean, Kellen Mond is only going to play if there's an injury.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Trask will only play if the world ends.
I'm rooting for the Meteor now. I like that.
But Davis Mills has a legit chance to start some games this year, even if there's no injury in Houston, because you've got to think that if the Watson doesn't play for them, and nobody thinks he will, and they're going to suck, that at a certain point, Tyrod Taylor is not getting you anything. You might as well find out what you got with the rookie.
100%. I mean, and I think the sooner that they can do that, the better. I mean, because like you said, like that roster, like if they don't win a single game this year, I wouldn't be that surprised. They'll probably luck into 1 or 2.
Oh, I think they've got way too many mediocre players to go 0-17. There's way too many players on that roster. Like, we tried to do a biggest hole for them, and we had a hard time figuring out what the biggest hole was, because there's so many places that they've patched up with like 2 or 3 slightly below average guys.
Right. They get a solid.
Like, they just have no firepower to even speak of.
Y'all are sleeping on Ryan Lindley and Jeff Driscoll now.
Oh my God. Yeah. I don't know what they need Jeff Driscoll for when they have Ryan Lindley. It's
all of Andy Dalton's backups in one place. I'm writing the Cincinnati Bengals chapter in the comments and things like that. I'm in the going deep section for the people who caught 6 passes for the Bengals. Where this person who caught 6 passes for the Bengals wind up? Texans. Every single time they're on the Texans. You're grabbing the bottom of the bench for the team that picked 1st overall one season and 6th overall the second season.
To be fair, if the Texans got Andy Dalton's current backup quarterback, they'd probably be in a pretty decent spot.
Yeah, right. And yet they didn't have a 1st-round pick for some reason.
They've got a left tackle.
They do.
All right.
Blocking for Ryan Lindley and Jeff Driscoll.
The other thing I wanted to talk about on today's radio hour was MVP odds. And then we have a fun special odds that Mike sent out right before we got on the air. But let's start out with MVP odds, because I'm curious what you guys think. I don't quite know how to put this on the screen yet, but but if I put it on the screen anyway, people who are listening to this as a podcast would be out of luck. So
can I share my screen or sitting up?
Share it on Zoom if you've got the NFL, if you've got the odds.
All right, let me see if I can share screen here. Boop.
All right.
Is that in any way visible?
Yes.
Woo!
So these are the odds, according to VegasInsider.com, for winning the MVP. And Mahomes is number 1 at 5-1. Duh. Rodgers at 9-1, Allen at 11-1, Stafford at 14-1, tied with Brady. Then Lamar Jackson and Dak Prescott are at 16-1, and Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, and Justin Herbert are at 20-1. I feel like Stafford, I mean, I guess the story there is if the Rams are the team that some people think they are, Stafford will get all the glory because it will be the quarterback trade that made things that way. I don't see the Rams as being that good, and I don't think Stafford is going to have an MVP offense. I don't see him as having an MVP year.
I rarely like the favorite in these things. I like Patrick Mahomes so much at plus 500. At 5-1 right now, I'm actually on my favorite app. I'm going to unshare my screen here so people can verify this. I am actually on my favorite legal app right now, trying to see if I can get 5-1 on Aaron Rodgers. I mean, not on Aaron Rodgers, excuse me, on Patrick Mahomes. Because, I don't think you're going to, if he starts out 3 wins, throws 9 touchdown passes, you're not even going to get that. I'm getting plus 450 on my app here. I won't say which one. We're not supposed to do that, I don't think.
Wouldn't you say that Mahomes' chances of winning the MVP have to be close to 50%?
I mean, probably, because why this is so, because if you look at the other guys that are up here on the odds, like Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he's probably the second best quarterback in the league right now, but like, we don't know where he's playing. Like, we don't know if he's going to play in Green Bay. And if he plays in Green Bay, I'm not entirely certain that like situation is going to be, lovely enough for him to end up playing at that level. Right. And then if it's in Denver, like, they'll be good, but we don't know that he's going to be in Denver. So I think betting on that now is like kind of weird. Josh Allen to me I think is probably due for some degree of regression where an MVP season is just not possible. Matthew Stafford, I've never really been particularly as high on Stafford as other people. I think he's going to make the Rams offense look good and better than it was last year with Goff, but probably not MVP levels. I think in terms of MVP, like the best bet after Mahomes to me is probably Brady, or honestly, I do like Lamar Jackson. I think it's a lot more likely he plays closer to what he was in 2019 than 2020, especially with some of what they did to fix the pass catching core.
I like Dak Prescott.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the Cowboys are going to be really good this year, and he's going to be the biggest difference. People are not going to go, oh, look, offensive line is healthy. They're going to go, oh, look, quarterback is healthy. And he could put up some big numbers with those receivers in that offensive line.
Yeah, I have him a plus 1,700 on my favorite app right now. And I will say, people are talking about Stafford. That just looks like sort of like casual better, name in the news, LA guy. I think they're just looking at to just drive action right now. I don't see people would only take that plus 1,400 because it sounds so tasty. There's so much meat on that it's worth putting a goofy bet in. I, on the other hand, just put my goofy bet in on Patrick Mahomes, locked in at plus 450 to win the MVP. So circle it. Old takes exposed.
Let's hear it for gambling being legal in New Jersey.
Yes, it's delightful. It's delightful. So many fun things are legal now.
I will say it's interesting to look at who's lower down. Jalen Hurts at 50-1, Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey at 50-1. Like, can you imagine the season that Christian McCaffrey would have? Because think about it. For Christian McCaffrey to win the MVP, Sam Darnold has to be good enough for Carolina to go to the playoffs. Like, that seems like a lot farther than 50-1 for me.
I mean, and also, like, with Henry, like, how much better could he be than last year? Like, last year was like, if there's going to be an MVP caliber season for a running back in the modern era, it would probably look a whole lot like 2,000 yards and 17 touchdowns. And I don't even think he was close to probably winning. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Right, and that's it. And so I see Dalvin Cook at plus 6,600, where you can create a story where he has like a 1,800 yard, 20 touchdown season. It's just not going to happen for MVP, and that's one of the problems with betting on voting when you know that the voters are just in this headspace. I don't think running backs necessarily should be MVPs, but they have been in the past. You get a 2,000 yard season; it's not ridiculous to do it.
Am I allowed to talk about this since I'm one of the voters?
This is well, I mean, there you go. Right? It's like I talked to three other voters, and let's not even go there. That's a road.
Like, what would an MVP season even look like for a running back? I mean, it would have to be like 2,500 yards and 35 touchdowns total. Like, it would have to be so mind blowing.
And no quarterback. No quarterback would have a year that was as good as what Josh Allen did last year, let alone Mahomes or Rodgers.
Right, like that's honestly probably the part that is less likely. Like I think not that a season like that for a running back is possible, but like I would be less blown away with that than I would be if like no quarterback had an MVP case. Like that to me would just be insane. It seems there's always like one or two guys that have a pretty clear, absurd season.
And you have a lot of voters right now who look at it and say offensive player of the year, the ground player of the year, all those are for they're like running back awards in a lot of people's minds. And once that's in people's minds, whether it is or it isn't, voters vote that way.
Right.
So that says, oh, you're going to win offensive player of the year for that season, but the MVP is a quarterback award. That's,
I even put it out there on Twitter last year. How do you want me to vote for offensive player of the year? And the winning choice was best non-quarterback.
There you go.
And that's what I voted for.
Right.
Clinton says, since MVPs are partly a narrative vote, Baker could be a long shot dark horse if the Browns meet and exceed expectations. I mean,
I just
it's
don't
a
think
better narrative.
Right. Same with Dak, though. You do the same thing with Dak.
Yeah, I like Dak better, I guess, for that story. Even though Dak's odds at 16-1 are not as long as Baker Mayfield's odds at 33-1. And then the other fun odds we have to look at that Mike sent right before we went on were these odds that some site is doing for the Madden 22 cover. So I'm going to
remember how to share my screen here.
Can you share these odds on your screen?
I'm working on it. I'm an old man. Here we go. See them?
So here are your Madden 22 cover odds. Aaron Rodgers at 11-2, Derrick Henry at 6-1, Travis Kelce 15-2, Aaron Donald 15-2, Tom Brady 17-2, Dalvin Cook and Devontae Adams 9-1, Josh Allen 21-2, and Mahomes and Brady together at 12-1.
I like that.
Wilson at 12-1, Hopkins and Diggs are each 13-1, and other at 15-1.
Aaron Rodgers is going to have to be in a suit. He's going to be in his Jeopardy suit. You're going to put him on the cover wearing that Packers jersey. I mean, or just a close up of his face with that angry look he gets on when somebody runs the wrong route.
I like Aaron
Rodgers
Donald
being number one is absurd.
I like Aaron Donald because
too,
they haven't gone with a defensive player in a few years.
And the Rams are like a pretty, popular, trendy team that people like. And I think everybody knows how good Aaron Donald has been for, basically since he's gotten into the league. So I think that's probably my favorite bet, period, on this list.
Henry would be the ultimate one for, well, first of all, it's Madden and it's fun playing running backs in Madden. He is coming off that huge year. And of course, you have to get the curse in line. So you pick the running back coming off of a 1,000,000-yard season. So you get the curse in line. Let me ask this, though. They don't still do the thing. It's been a year or two for me with Madden. I can't seem to get near my PlayStation during a pandemic because there's a lot of teenage boys in the house. Do they still do the thing where they base the cover to a degree on what new feature they're trying to promote?
They've done that the last couple years. I was thinking that too, right? Like if there's new defensive controls, it'll be Aaron Donald. If there's new running back controls, it'll be Derrick Henry.
Right.
I don't think the last couple of years have seen that, mostly because the concentration has been on more play modes.
Yeah.
Rather than like the year that Lamar Jackson was on the cover, the big thing was that you could play like street ball.
Right. Which is fun. I mean, the casual element of gaming, I understand why they do that.
Josh Allen on the cover,
street ball.
Then they could have a fan mode where you put other fans through tables.
It could be a career mode and where you prove the doubters wrong. Your new career mode, you get pooped on by the analytics community for 2 years. Can you overcome it? It'll be like a challenge. You can unlock the achievements.
Yeah, I like Josh Allen at 21-2. Buffalo's had a bigger fan base than the size of their market, and I think that the Josh Allen has proved the doubters wrong story is a really good story.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. I'm going to stick with Henry. I would take Henry if I was. I mean, my God, I'm not betting on a Madden cover, but I would take Henry.
Al, M. Nasco, they need to fix and improve franchise mode. Biggest disappointment the last few years with the game. Yeah, I feel like they could do so much better with the franchise mode. They could do so much better with the trade logic. People must not play it enough. Plus, the fact is they don't make money from it. They make money from Ultimate Team. So that's the mode they're going to work on because that's where the money is.
I've been wanting for years some version of NFL head coach, the game. And I don't know if we could get a new game like that or just Madden doing something like that. But anything similar to that, I think would be an incredible addition. That would probably bring me back in.
The original head coach was really good. And they could put a lot of that same stuff under the hood for Madden and just, if you don't want to play that type of game, you don't have to. You can play all the other modes. But there's no doubt franchise mode has been a bit of a disappointment the last couple of years. It's not really moving places. They're doing things like setting up so you can play street ball instead.
Casual gamer, cooperative gamer, all that thing. That's a big growth market. They're the only game in town. There hasn't been a blitz in years. There hasn't been like a casual football game in years. So they expand into that market, which has millions and millions of users, as opposed to the hundreds and hundreds of us who will be like, oh, I want a draft, a scouting department simulator, and I want to mess around with that.
I think the only sports that have competing games now are basketball and golf.
Wow.
And I don't even know if EA still does basketball. So it may not. It may only be golf.
I have not heard about an EA. I played 2K for years, but I have not heard of an EA game. They
did NBA Live for a couple of years, but I think it may have died off because everyone just played 2K. So there are not. They still do NBA Live, says M. Noskow. So they.
Okay.
Yeah, most sports now it's just one game. That's your only choice.
And sometimes it shows when you play them. The lack of competition over multiple years. The first year it's still a high quality version of the game when they start thinking in terms of a competitor, and then it shows that they're the only game in town.
Yeah, I'm just happy to have MLB The Show on Xbox this year.
Yes.
Hey, anybody out there knows how to get a PS5? Please let me know.
See, now we're truly on Twitch because we've become a gaming channel.
Yeah, and not $1,400 off the back of the truck that my Uncle Carmine got for me. I mean, like an actual just PS5 for this price. Struggling since Christmas.
Next week, we're going to broadcast Mike playing Civilization 6. I saw right before we went on the air, I saw you retweeting the Civilization 6 account having a who's the best Civ 6 leader, and I'm like, oh my God, that is such Tanier bait.
And it was 100%, and I'm tweeting it like a madman. And I don't watch a lot of Twitch, ladies and gentlemen, but I watch Civ 6 playthroughs frequently here on Twitch. That's my entry point to this. And now me and Aaron and Derrik are Twitch streamers. But let's do that. Sometime in the dead time, you and I will play Civ against each other. The three of us, the four of us, get Scott in here too.
I still haven't played Civ 6. I need to start playing it.
You do. You're 3 years behind.
I'm way behind. All right, let's wrap it up. Thanks, everybody, for watching on Twitch, Football Outsiders Radio Hour. A reminder, we're here at 1 o'clock Eastern on Thursdays during the off-season, 10 a.m. Pacific. Thank you, Mike Tanier. Thank you, Derrik Klassen. Thank you to everybody listening as a podcast, or if you're watching after the fact on YouTube, or if you're watching us live on Twitch right now. But remember, it's only by watching on Twitch that you get to interact with us live and ask us questions, and we will totally respond to you. So you should make sure to tune in on twitch.com/FB Outsiders. Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern. Thank you everybody. Thank you very much. I'm Aaron Schatz, and we'll see you all next week.